Before my wedding, a close friend asked to borrow the spotlight of my special day to film her boyfriend's proposal. Little did I know that on my wedding day, she would arrive dripping in gold and silver, stealing all the attention. She even instructed the wedding planner to focus on filming her, making anyone watching think she was the bride. Not only was I, the actual bride, reduced to a mere supporting role in my own wedding, but I was also forced to foot the expensive bill for her proposal. Later, during my difficult labor, my husband chose our baby's life over mine. After my death, he took both our child and my $1 million inheritance to marry his best friend. Only then did I discover that my best friend's proposal video at my wedding was actually meant for my husband all along. In my next life, I'll expose these traitors for who they really are. "Rebecca, do I look beautiful?" Phoebe stood before me, proudly twirling to show off her luxurious dress that outshone even my wedding gown. Seeing that I didn't respond, she reached out to poke my cheek, but I forcefully pushed her hand away. Hearing her cry of pain, I slowly released her hand and met her eyes with indifference. Sorry, I was lost in thought. My half-hearted apology went unnoticed, as Phoebe was too busy flaunting her delicate figure. From the mirror, I saw a man gazing at Phoebe with infatuated eyes. I recognized that familiar figure at a glance. It was my husband, William. Clenching my fists, I barely managed to control myself from slapping both of them across the face. In my previous life, when I fell into a coma during my difficult labor, William, my seemingly devoted but heartless husband, made the decision for me. When the doctor asked him to choose between mother and child, he answered without hesitation, "Save the child." I had trusted him blindly, believing he would only let me die if there were no other choice. With my last breath, I entrusted him with our child, the fruit of our love that I died bringing into this world, begging him to raise our baby well. He promised fervently, swearing to pour all his love for me into our child and never let another woman take my place. Yet there I was, my spirit watching as he eagerly slipped into Phoebe's bed the very night of my death. As they lay entwined, they watched the video of Phoebe's proposal to her boyfriend from my wedding. Only then did I realize she had meant to propose to my husband all along. They shared passionate kisses as Phoebe voiced her jealousy. "Husband, I can't bear the thought that she once had you." William nipped at her lip, whispering tenderly, "Baby, if it weren't for her money, I would never have married her. Now that she's gone, everything that was hers is yours." Just like that, my parents' inheritance and the child I died giving birth to became Phoebe's. William is equally despicable, and I won't let them disgust me any longer. I walked to William's side, deliberately pointing at the most expensive wedding dress. "Darling, I want that custom-made gown. It would perfectly highlight my beauty." I watched as William's expression froze for a moment before he replied with a stern look and criticizing tone, "That wouldn't suit you. How would it look for William's woman to dress so provocatively? In my previous life, when we went dress shopping, he complained about my slim figure, saying I wasn't as delicate as Phoebe. He claimed those custom gowns were too flashy and would make me look seductive, praising my gentle and virtuous appearance while implying Phoebe was indecent. I had even defended Phoebe then, chiding him for speaking ill of my best friend. How laughable. He never truly thought the dress looked bad. He just wanted Phoebe to outshine everyone at my wedding. The thought made my blood boil. I'm wearing that one. My tone was ice cold, brooking no argument. His face darkened instantly, his voice carrying a warning edge. "Rebecca, when did you become so defiant? Who else would pamper you like a child the way I do?" I almost laughed aloud. Did he think he was the CEO? He was merely a team leader in my company. I was the president. I couldn't help but wonder how I'd fallen into his trap so completely. After my parents' tragic accident, I'd been left vulnerable and emotionally fragile. William, with his seemingly perfect facade, had seen through my weakness and expertly manipulated me. Looking back, our entire relationship had been orchestrated. How had a team leader with a modest salary managed to frequent the high-end establishments where I often dined? Phoebe must have been pulling the strings. Phoebe and I had become close friends in university. Within 6 months of meeting William, we were married. When I confided in Phoebe that things felt rushed and I wanted to take things slower, she warned me that if I didn't hurry, someone else would snatch up a good man like William. Perhaps it was her constant praise of William that clouded my judgment. Whenever William and I argued, she'd initially take my side and criticize him, only to turn around and blame my character flaws for our relationship problems. Under her manipulation, I accepted William's proposal. His mother, Margaret Zhu, was a stingy, prejudiced woman who insisted on a mere 8,800 yuan bride price, claiming it was traditional in their hometown. Even after learning of my pregnancy, she wouldn't budge, sneering that I could walk away if I didn't like it. She even expressed concern about potential hereditary diseases because I was an orphan. The humiliation nearly drove me to miscarriage. Then, Phoebe urged me to avoid confrontation with the elderly, insisting I wouldn't have to live with Margaret anyway. Behind closed doors, William repeatedly sweet-talked me into accepting blame. He promised to put the house in my name, but after our marriage, I discovered the truth. While my name was on the deed, he'd taken out a loan that became our joint debt. When I considered abortion and calling off the wedding, Phoebe intervened again. She manipulated my emotions by invoking my deceased parents and warned that the aborted child would harbor a grudge. Despite the psychological torment, I chose to keep the baby. Remembering all this, rage burned through me like wildfire. Hearing William's criticism now, I raised my voice defiantly. "Fine, the wedding's off," I declared with contempt, striking him hard enough to send his glasses flying. William clutched his reddening cheek, his composure shattered. "How could you? Rebecca, your selfishness knows no bounds." Phoebe grabbed my wrist, feigning concern while setting me up. "Rebecca, you can't call off the wedding over one thoughtless comment. You're being too emotional." As the crowd's attention turned to us, Phoebe tried to paint me as an unstable bride, but I refused to back down. "If he can't even afford a wedding dress, what's next after marriage? A coffin?" I mocked, fixing him with an icy stare as his face reddened with embarrassment. "An 8,800 yuan bride price. Anyone would think I'm the one paying him. I'm funding the entire wedding while he just stands there, and now he complains about buying me a dress? I might as well take my unborn child and die." My cutting words struck William like daggers. The onlookers' faces twisted with disgust and contempt, their critical stares piercing him from all angles. His neck flushed red as shame spread across his cheeks. Phoebe, caught off guard by my sudden change in attitude, narrowed her eyes and shot William an urgent glance. "William, say something," she prompted. Trapped in his embarrassment, he quickly replied, "Buy it if you like it. You're my wife. If I don't spoil you, who else would I spoil?" I suppressed a mocking smile, replacing it with an innocent expression. "Spoiling just me isn't enough. What about Phoebe?" They both froze, momentarily flustered. Phoebe recovered first, patting my shoulder with feigned confusion. "Rebecca, what do you mean? I have a boyfriend." As they watched me nervously, I spoke deliberately. "Phoebe is my best friend. You can't just buy my wedding dress, you have to get hers too." William's indignation peaked at the checkout counter. "What? This worthless dress costs 138,000 yuan? You're insane. This is robbery. I'll shut you down." His desperate cries reached everyone's ears, but no one sympathized. Some even sneered, their judgment already swayed by my earlier words. William turned to me with pleading eyes, seeking mercy. In my previous life, I'd paid for my own wedding dress. Now, seeing his desperate look, I put on a tearful display. "William, if you really don't want to marry me, I'll take the child and die." My performance as an abandoned woman worked perfectly. The crowd looked ready to kick William themselves. Under their contemptuous stares, he finally swiped his card. Yet I noticed him quietly returning Phoebe's chosen dress, replacing it with a plain style. Phoebe saw it too, but remained silent. On the drive home, Phoebe seemed desperate to ask about my changed attitude. I spoke first, claiming I might have pre-wedding depression and could snap at any moment. "Since when did you have this condition?" she asked. Meeting her eyes calmly, I replied, "I only discovered it recently." My odd behavior made the excuse believable. They seemed relieved I hadn't called off the wedding, probably thinking my illness would make me easier to manipulate for my inheritance. The thought fueled my anger, so I went on a shopping spree for Phoebe, all on William's cards. He'd given me one with a 100,000 yuan limit that I'd never touched before. As purchase notifications flooded his phone at the office, he called to rage about my wasteful spending. I replied simply, "This is all for Phoebe. Isn't she proposing to her boyfriend at our wedding? Don't worry, what's mine is yours. She's my best friend. If I don't help her, who will?" My naive tone dispelled Phoebe's suspicions while feeding William's delusion that the money would eventually return to him. The wedding day arrived. Without telling William, I had secretly upgraded the venue to a more luxurious 5-star hotel. He still believed I was covering the costs myself, but I had signed everything in his name. Even the guests couldn't help but marvel at how fortunate he was to have married me. No one knew I had paid for everything in advance. I had given him enough face by keeping it quiet. As he basked in everyone's praise, he wore the proud expression of a successful man. In my dazzling wedding gown, I became the most radiant bride at the scene. Even William couldn't resist trying to touch me several times. I feigned shyness and avoided his advances, all while noting the dark look in Phoebe's eyes and the jealousy that was driving her mad. Earlier, a seemingly careless waiter had ruined Phoebe's expensive dress. Of course, I had arranged it so she would have no choice but to wear the dress I'd prepared. Though still elegant and luxurious, her current attire looked tacky compared to mine. To further distract her, I'd arranged for a high-end photographer to follow her around. I wondered if she would lose her mind when she saw all the unflattering close-ups taken straight from the camera. Not stopping there, I'd instructed all staff to address her repeatedly as the bride's best friend. Phoebe couldn't find a single opportunity to play bride, instead looking more like my personal attendant. During the ring exchange, I graciously gave the stage to Phoebe to film her marriage proposal video. She gazed deeply in William's direction, reciting sweet and touching declarations of love. In my previous life, I had never questioned her story about a mysterious boyfriend abroad. Now, she was not only sharing intimate details, but also putting on an emotional display with dramatic tears. Some guests below were already grumbling with displeasure. Who does she think she is? She's not even the bride. Where's her sense of propriety? Proposing to your boyfriend at someone else's wedding? You must be deranged. If I were the bride and groom, I wouldn't rest until I put this foolish woman in her place. Even William's relatives were glaring at Phoebe with contempt. While William appeared to discourage her, his actions only invited misunderstanding. They exchanged rings before everyone, even having someone prevent me from approaching the stage. Behind my back, William claimed he was protecting my good friend's dignity, while Phoebe kept weeping about losing control of her emotions and never meaning to spoil the wedding. Yet she had posted her carefully curated photos and proposal video on social media, then forwarded me the extravagant bill for payment. I had lost all face, and under her relentless pressure, I had no choice but to settle it. Now, I led William directly onto the stage. Before all the guests, I joined Phoebe's and William's hands together. Taking out the custom ring engraved with William's and my names, I placed it on Phoebe's finger. The crowd erupted in chaos, their expressions turning scandalous. One guest, cutting through the commotion, called out, "Could it be the bridesmaid is proposing to the groom? Is the bride about to exact her revenge?" I had to admit, he was exactly right. Ignoring the audience's knowing looks, I gripped their hands firmly, preventing their escape. Behind me, the large screen displayed an intimate photo of Phoebe and William, accompanied by the text, "Welcome to the wedding of Phoebe and William." I put on a performance, my eyes welling with tears, and spoke in a heartfelt tone. "Phoebe, you're my best friend. I never thought that if you wanted my husband, you could have just said so. How could I deny you?" Phoebe's composure cracked as she hastily defended herself. "No, I didn't. Rebecca, if you're unwell, don't imagine such things." She yanked her hand away from mine. As she tried to flee, I stepped on her dress, causing it to tear at the bodice and expose a considerable amount of skin. "Phoebe, don't be shy about admitting it. You're captivated by an exceptional man like William, aren't you? You mentioned your boyfriend has a large mole on his ear and a scar on the inner arm. How curious that William shares these exact features. You adore me so much you won't mind." The large screen suddenly displayed incriminating photos while guests captured everything on their phones. I knew that within hours, these two lovers would become notorious. William finally grasped the situation, realizing I was orchestrating everything. He furiously ordered the staff to shut down the screen, but without my authorization, the technician ignored his commands. Now playing on the screen was a photo of the three of us, with me always lingering in the background beside them. Looking closely, one could see their lingering gazes at each other, thick with unspoken meaning. Back then, I hadn't noticed anything amiss because Phoebe claimed this angle would make my face appear slimmer. Now it all served as evidence exposing their true nature. Seeing the staff's refusal to comply, William grabbed my arm, attempting to drag me off stage. He snarled, "Rebecca, your paranoia doesn't give you the right to slander Phoebe and me. We're innocent. Keep this up and the wedding's off." I had anticipated his clever deflection, so I shrieked like someone unhinged. Phoebe wanted to film a proposal video, and I kindly let her borrow you to experience what getting married feels like. Was that wrong? If you're ungrateful, fine, but you dare berate me? I'm devastated. William was stunned, speechless, and the audience was equally shocked by my words. While Phoebe babbled about the wedding dress, her subtle expressions betrayed her inner turmoil. Suddenly, her gown split down the middle, leaving her exposed before everyone. Every detail was captured clearly by the cameras for all to see. Perfect. Now she was the one humiliated. William immediately broke free from me and rushed to embrace her, shielding her from view like a knight protecting his princess. The high-definition cameras captured their intimate embrace clearly, like lovers caught in a scandal. Moments ago, he'd sworn there was nothing between them, yet here they were, wrapped in each other's arms. No one present was foolish enough to miss the truth of their relationship. I slapped them both across the face right there on stage, my voice echoing through the venue, laden with anguish. I'll help you. I wish you a happy marriage. Don't feel guilty. Be happy. I fled the scene in tears, playing the role of the beautiful runaway bride. Someone in the crowd finally snapped, shouting at William, "What kind of man are you? Your wife just ran away, and you're still embracing your mistress." William snapped back to reality. After shoving Phoebe into a corner, he rushed out, only to find himself surrounded by debt collectors with no escape. "Mr. William, this bill requires immediate settlement." "Mr. William, here as well. Ms. Rebecca sent us." "Mr. William." Meanwhile, I was at familiar luxury boutiques, easily making purchases. I had previously told these shops I'd invite them to my wedding, mentioning that my husband would cover all expenses. The staff, knowing me well, had assumed it was just a wealthy person's whimsy. Now, the absurd scene of a groom being hounded by merchants for payment unfolded at my wedding. William was completely lost. He realized he'd fallen into my trap but had no means to repay me. He must have been calculating the credit card debt and house mortgage. If his plan failed, he'd face crushing debt. He never expected their marriage proposal stunt would destroy our wedding. Phoebe, after adjusting her clothes, chased after him. She clearly understood the importance of my marriage to him. Grabbing my wrist, she sobbed and apologized profusely. "Rebecca, it's all my fault. I was obsessed with William, but he never reciprocated. I staged that proposal purely out of selfishness. Now that you've expressed your anger, please don't blame William." It seemed Phoebe was willing to sacrifice herself to save William, but I hadn't forgotten her cunning nature. Seeing my sadness without reaction, she slapped herself hard to elicit my sympathy. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry, but you can't abandon William because of me. He's a good man, and you're carrying his child. Who else would want you if you don't marry William?" As usual, her words seemed reasonable, but carried subtle barbs. William's mother, who had also lost face, intervened. She looked at me with guilty eyes, finding it easier to confront Phoebe than apologize to me. "You shameless woman ruined my son's perfect marriage. Get out, you homewrecker." She struck Phoebe repeatedly until her face swelled, then attempted to ingratiate herself with me. "Rebecca, you're the daughter-in-law I've always wanted. Please forgive William." Seeing my expression soften slightly, she continued her misguided reasoning. "Listen, it's natural for men to have affairs. My son simply doesn't refuse them. He's not responsible for Phoebe. If you're angry, blame these shameless women who pursue my son because he's such a catch." She stomped on Phoebe's wrists until she cried out in pain. William seized the opportunity to grab my hand, but meeting my indifference, he kicked Phoebe hard. "Get out! Rebecca treated you like a true friend, and you shamelessly seduced me, hurting my precious wife." Phoebe collapsed from the kick. She crawled to my feet, assuming a pitiful expression, pleading for mercy. "Rebecca, please forgive me. I went too far. This has nothing to do with William." She continued begging while William's mother beat her, and William ranted angrily. "Die, you seductress. Rebecca is my true love. You betrayed her trust." I observed the three of them, watching their seamless performance as they desperately tried to secure my money. As people continued taking photos and videos, William, desperate to contain the situation, dropped to his knees without regard for his dignity. "Rebecca, you can hit me and scold me all you want, but nothing happened between Phoebe and me. You can't punish me for her feelings. I swear I'll never see her again." I lowered my head, casting a sorrowful glance at Phoebe. "Really? Can you truly never see William again? Can you resist your longing for him? You know how wonderful William is." I continued playing the role of a naive girl blindly in love, displaying my lingering affection for William. Hearing me echo her own manipulative words back to her, Phoebe could only respond through gritted teeth. I promise, I won't covet what isn't mine. I pressed my lips together, feigning reluctance. Since you've said that, I suppose I'll stay with William. Their faces lit up briefly, thinking they'd achieved their goal of manipulating me. But in the next breath, I dropped an unexpected condition. William, I'll only marry you if you quit your job to stay home with the baby, and we'll marry only after you pass this probation period. My words struck William like lightning, draining the color from Phoebe's triumphant face. William's mother erupted in protest. Rebecca, don't think your money gives you the right to make such demands. My son has a promising career. Why should he become a stay-at-home father? If you're mentally ill, seek treatment. Since ancient times, women have always cared for children. These are our ancestral traditions. Now that you won't marry my son, you're just damaged goods. No one else will want you. Each venomous word cut deep, filling me with revulsion. Before my rebirth, I'd thought Phoebe and William's betrayal was revolting enough. Now I saw that William's mother, who'd raised such a despicable son, was equally twisted. Seeing my rekindled anger, William slapped his mother without hesitation. "Mother, enough! I love Rebecca, and no one can stop me from marrying her." Of course he loved me, with countless bills hanging over his head. Returning to the wedding venue, most guests had departed, leaving chaos in their wake. William fawned over me like a desperate dog. With Phoebe dealt with, it was his turn. The expensive bills and charges were all in his name. When he refused to pay, I told him to disappear forever. Now he was trapped, forced to drain his savings. I knew about his stock market fortune, but after settling these expenses, he'd be left with almost nothing. Worse still, he had to quit his job. Why make him quit? It was all part of my plan. To destroy a man, you need only take away his money, and the one he loves. Thanks to my arrangements, everyone regarded me as the most pitiable victim. The commissioned essay and accompanying presentation sparked heated online discussions. Phoebe retreated from the public eye, leaving behind her reputation as a hypocritical homewrecker. She endured online harassment, received dead animals from her family, and lost her job. As an important partner of her company, I needed only give my subordinates a meaningful look for them to understand my wishes. After all, who truly wouldn't mind their best friend becoming their husband's mistress? Yet people couldn't understand why I despised only Phoebe's actions while still marrying William. I made dramatic statements and posted about my happiness multiple times daily, leading netizens to believe I was brainwashed. Gradually, they directed their anger toward Phoebe and William, convinced they had driven me mad. I had destroyed almost everything Phoebe valued, though society remained frustratingly tolerant of homewreckers. Meanwhile, she refused to accept, being played for a fool, and was determined to regain my trust at any cost. Though curious about how I discovered their affair, she focused on damage control. She offered me her prized handbag as a peace offering, one I had originally given her, and I sold it to a saleswoman for a hefty profit. How laughable that she returned my own gift as a token of remorse. In my previous life, I'd been too trusting and easy to exploit. Now, I would reclaim every penny without remorse. This pair of betrayers owed me that much, but the child in my womb complicated matters. Given how things stood with William, I refused to bear his child. In my previous life, I learned they wanted my baby because Phoebe was infertile. She must have delighted in taking everything from me, my money, husband, and child. Yet, not being the biological mother, she transferred her hatred for me onto the child. Though only a few years old, the child endured deliberate abuse during William's business trips. Despite chronic malnutrition, Phoebe fabricated medical records, blaming it on hereditary illness from my family. William's mother not only absolved Phoebe, but despised my memory, leaving behind a curse. Years later, she adopted another boy to raise as her ideal child. My child, no longer useful, met a tragic end at her hands. Now, my child was yet unborn. I thought silently, "My child, don't blame me for being cruel. Even if you were born to such a father, you would never find happiness. I refuse to irresponsibly subject you to the trauma of a broken family." So I gradually accepted Phoebe's overtures, allowing her into my home without dwelling on the past. She hesitated before asking, "Rebecca, is William still home?" I waved dismissively, wearing a smug smile. "He'll leave after finishing our dinner. Don't worry, he won't show his face." My, how accommodating I've become to the other woman. I must say, my acting skills have improved considerably. Hearing this, Phoebe believed I had truly moved past everything. In reality, I was waiting for her to slip up. At the dinner table, I gently stroked my slightly swollen belly. Phoebe seized the opportunity to place her hand there too. Rebecca, if only you could truly forgive and forget. Could I be your child's godmother? Seeing her hypocritical smile, my expression turned cold. After betraying me once, you have no right to be this child's godmother. My words sent Phoebe back to hell. She must have grown weary of fawning over me these past days. As I watched the car speeding toward us, I casually pushed her aside. Her planned rescue plot backfired spectacularly. Instead of saving me, her body was crushed beneath the truck. A day earlier, my hired detective had thoroughly investigated her schemes. She'd pay thugs to stage a fake rescue, hoping to earn my trust and forgiveness. But I'd seen through her plan and let her suffer the consequences instead. Her legs were crushed, condemning her to a life in a wheelchair, dependent on a catheter. Oh no. Phoebe, are you all right? I wept at her hospital bedside, my face contorted with fake anguish. I'm so sorry. Why did you foolishly rush into traffic? My words cleverly absolved me of blame. After all, she had chosen a location without surveillance to lure me into the wilderness. When William arrived in a panic, I threw myself fearfully into his arms. William, Phoebe, she tried to kill me. Phoebe had just regained consciousness when she heard my accusation, and she immediately broke down. Her speech was fragmented, unable to explain why she'd led me to such a remote location. She could hardly admit she'd planned to injure herself to win my trust, nor that her scheme had backfired so spectacularly. It was you! Rebecca, you witch! You deliberately crippled me! After I whispered in William's ear, he struck Phoebe without hesitation. You bitch, you dare harm my child. Why couldn't that car have killed you? William still cared about the child I carried. When I told him Phoebe had caused me to lose the baby, his rage exploded. Her plot had fallen short of my expectations. Knowing she'd lost, Phoebe beat the bed frame in agony, her voice hoarse with desperation. It wasn't me! It wasn't! Rebecca, you witch! You killed your own child! I hadn't killed it. I'd protected it from these two despicable people. William lost all control, disregarding Phoebe's injuries as he struck her ribs and grabbed her weak attempts at self-defense. It wasn't me, William. How could I harm your child? William was blinded by rage, having long since tasted other women's charms, another outcome I'd deliberately orchestrated. My random fits of temper at home had naturally led him to seek comfort elsewhere. Women full of novelty who didn't question his character knew exactly how to soothe his fragile ego. Thus, his affection for Phoebe had evaporated, replaced by burning shame. Isn't ruining my wedding enough? You deserve this, you bitch! Why don't you just die? You killed my child, you barren waste! Phoebe seemed shocked that William, whom she'd once trusted, had become her enemy. He carelessly exposed the secrets she'd buried deep within her heart. See how easily their bond shattered. With just a subtle push, they turned on each other. Though Phoebe struggled against William's assault, she was no match for his blind rage. After venting his fury, he left, without a backward glance. 10. Rebecca, are you satisfied? How could you be so vicious? I met her hateful gaze with an icy smile. Aren't you the vicious one? You just haven't found the chance to kill me yet. Everything I did today was because you forced my hand. You have no right to be this child's godmother, let alone accuse me. You were acting the whole time? Playing the fool to catch the tiger? Rebecca, you're truly despicable. Phoebe clutched her injured chest, coughing blood. In that moment, she understood everything, but no longer had the strength to fight back. I had already drained most of her savings, and now her medical bills would consume whatever remained. Unable to afford treatment, she would waste away, her once prized beauty now worthless. As for William, he had blocked her number, dismissing her like a madwoman. Drunk on his perceived success, he stumbled home at night, hurling abuse. You bitch? So what if you've got someone on the side? Was it worth screaming at me? You don't even have a child now. How will you keep me interested? I'm done serving you, you bitch! He destroyed our belongings, strutting about in a drunken rage. Of course, I knew the source of his satisfaction. I had orchestrated it all. He believed the saleswoman's introduction to an influential investor would make him rich. In reality, it was all a facade, a clever scam. After an initial success with cryptocurrency, he indulged recklessly. Millions flowed through his hands like water. He'd grown weary of appeasing me, seeing me only as a backup plan. With the baby gone, his last thread of attachment had snapped. He must have thought himself wealthy enough to show his true colors so quickly. But morning would bring the harsh reality that it had all been an illusion, one I had carefully crafted. He discovered his trading account wouldn't connect, leading him to report the scam to police. But the fraudsters had vanished with his money. He broke down, realizing he'd lost everything, money and home alike. Though he stood guard outside my house, I'd already discarded his belongings. Without a marriage certificate, he was just another piece of trash I could dispose of. I couldn't suppress my smile. Finally free from the pretense, he knelt before me, shamelessly begging forgiveness. I was wrong, wife. I shouldn't have yelled. Forgive me. I'll never complain again. Treat me like a dog if you want. I lifted his chin with my toe, seeing only a desperate facade of submission on his handsome face. Sneering in disgust, I stamped on his face. A dog should act like one. I don't want a disloyal mutt. I ordered security to remove him as he wailed, "No, don't abandon me!" I scoffed, thinking, if I'd known this would happen, I never would have started this. Someone like him would always be rotten at the core, no matter how many chances he received. In the end, Phoebe, unable to bear her hopeless existence, took her own life. William, desperate to recover his losses, fell for scam after scam. Starting with nothing, his blind confidence led only to crushing debt. Unable to accept his fate, he too chose to end it all.